Everyone knows that some snakes are poisonous, right? And here's the thing, if you get bitten by a snake, what is the cure? Snake venom. So not everything is necessarily black and white. Not everything is always off or on. There's always nuances in different situations where you can apply one thing to another. As case in point, I often share with you my journey in the payment processing space so that you don't have to go through and experience the blind spots that I didn't see. Like, no one sits you down, whether you're in college or whether you even in a mentorship or if someone's coaching you. They don't sit you down and say, hey, here are all the things that can happen in payment processing, which essentially that's one industry, but it's really just, it's a business, right? It's corporate America at its finest. And if there was a path that can help us navigate through all these different angles in our businesses, I think most of us would be more successful than not. It's all the trials and the errors and the blind spots that you and I can't see. It brings me to talking about my experiences in the payment processing space and my experiences in the legal area. Now, here's the thing. Most people feel like attorneys aren't honest or aren't ethical. I've had attorneys tell me more than one, more than two, more than three, let me try to find you an attorney that is not going to take advantage of you. That's how well known it is. So we think about example of being bitten by a snake because they say snakes are poisonous, but then you also need venom to help you cure the poison that's running through your body, right? So that doesn't mean that snakes are 100% bad. It's just if you come across the wrong one and you don't have the venom nearby, you're gonna be in bad shape. So even though attorneys get a really bad name, and I'm pretty sure that that particular reputation has been earned, other side of that is that there are great attorneys, there are good attorneys, there are ethical attorneys that you and I must have on our team. And without some of these attorneys to help fight against the unethical players in whatever industry you're in the payment processing space, which kind of covers every industry, you have on both sides of the spectrum, you have your client who are great clients. Like, they want to run good businesses, they want to run ethical businesses, they want to be here today, tomorrow, and years from now. Some of them even want to pass the business down to their children and their children's children. But then you also have the businesses who want to be here today and be gone next week. You know, they got like a quick hustle, right? They have a weekend program. And they may not want to be here 6 months from now. They may not want to be here a year from now. And it's not that these people are 100% bad. They're thinking about what's happening at that particular moment and how they benefit. And sometimes they cut corners, and those corners happen to benefit them and may be a disadvantage to someone else. And there's all these things. I mean, the payment processing space is one of paperwork. There's a lot of fine print. And that's in any industry. If you go and rent a car, right? The great side about renting a car is you get to use a car. You don't have to purchase the entire car. You don't even have to have insurance, right? You can pay for insurance. But when you get to the contract part and you have to initial your name, 15 times in some cases, then you have to sign in 4 to 7 other places. How many of us are reading that? Like, really, how many of us have ever sat there and read through all that stuff? Like, we've already waited maybe an hour, 30 minutes, whatever, to get the car. Or maybe we flew in, 5-hour flight, and you land and you go pick up your car, right? You already signed for it online, so I know we're not reading through all that stuff, right? All that legalese, right? We don't even know what it is. And then other industries, let's say you buy a house, our mortgage documents were like this. There's no way we read through all that stuff. And I had an attorney go through it for me, and he saw some things in there, but that's the other side of the space, right? In every industry, you're gonna have tons and tons of paperwork that is made to basically protect the company for the most part. And so things happen in business in general. And if you don't have that attorney on your team that won't take advantage of you and who's strategic and who's really sharp, who doesn't take stuff, who is not afraid to fight, but at the same time to look out for you in a way where they don't allow the other side to just, milk you to death, because that is a strategy that some attorneys use. That's the other side of the legal profession, right? Is you have those kind of attorneys, and then you have the other type of attorney who says, you know what, I'm an ethical person. I am going to do everything in my power, whether I make extra money or not, to be this ethical attorney. Then you have the other side where they're like, you know what, we're just gonna bill this person to death. We're going to create all kinds of frivolous and, fabricated countersuits and lawsuits just to financially wear you down. Now, these other attorneys, they understand what it's doing to you at the moment. They know that, hey, we're milking them to death, right? Both attorneys are making money, but we're milking them to death. Eventually, we're going to make them spend so much money that they're out of business. And they don't even care if their client is right or not, right? There's so many cases where the information is right there. Some attorneys should be disbarred, it's so bad, or you can go to your state and file a complaint against them because it's so freaking bad and it's so clear and evident, but they have a license and some of them think that it's a license to do things that are unethical. In that moment, I'm sure they feel like they're doing the right thing, and they are absolutely poisonous and toxic to the industry in itself, because what they're doing doesn't just affect that case, but it has impact beyond that, right? You can cause another company who's an ethical company to go out of business, right? Which impacts all these other lives, which impacts all these other clients. And then there's that other higher power kicks in, because now, those particular, even though it's legal, it's not necessarily lawful. But then what's the flip side of that, right? Because not all attorneys are poisonous. Not all attorneys are toxic. There are some people who do certain things that are unethical and illegal, and they go to specific attorneys. They go to specific law firms, right? In California, oh my goodness, right? There's some players out there in Southern California where people specifically go to that particular law firm. And then the flip side of that is that you have other attorneys out there, right? That can help deal with that, those snake bites. And so, they have the venom that can help heal, and they can help bring balance and order to what it is that you're doing. And you have to kind of see that as an entrepreneur in the payment space. It could be on the sales side, right? You have sales reps who have been so abused and taken advantage of that all they know now is to abuse and take advantage of other people. And then you have the other sales rep who their foundation is ethics. Their foundation is not just make money by any means necessary. It's ethics. And they would do everything in their power to do the right thing by their client, regardless, right? They're just outstanding ethical people. In the payment space, you have operators who are extremely unethical. They have a history of being unethical. Everywhere they go, they do something that's pretty much damn near illegal. And companies still do business with them because they can and because they do. And then you have other operators in the payment space that will only do the ethical thing or the right thing. And then you have the industry itself. The industry itself is not here to take advantage of people, like the payment processing industry itself. It wasn't started to, hey, let's just go and take advantage of people. It's put in place to help people grow their businesses, but because of all the players in there, and they don't know one person from the next, you have some people who will take advantage of their card holders. We have some people literally with over 50% in chargebacks. That means half of their customers are charging back their product because they're going out and they're saying, you know what, I'm offering this, or I can do this for you, making these bold promises. And it could be a physical product or it could be a digital product. And then when the person buys it, they don't get what they were promised. And then when they try to reach out to the person, the business owner, maybe there's no communication, things happen, right? But a chargeback is created. That person does not want to give them back their money. They don't want to even send them the product that they promised in some cases. And so it creates a chargeback. They haven't delivered on the product, whether it be physical or digital, that they sold. And they don't want to give a refund. They don't want to give them the actual product. They don't even want to try to make the experience better for the customer. And so a chargeback is created. And then they that business owner closes out their bank account. They don't even want to cover the chargeback, and they create something called a reject. So the industry, the payment processing companies, they have to deal with that. And so sometimes they have to create rules and put bylaws in place that unfortunately affect everyone, even the non-poisonous business owners who do the right thing, who deliver what they promise, whether it be physical or digital. And if there is a dispute, they try to work it out with their clients and say, hey, how can we make this better? And if that doesn't work, and they'll give them a refund, they'll return it on their own. And if there is a chargeback, it's a chargeback, and they pay for the chargeback, and they keep moving in business, right? Because that's a person who's thinking long term, and they're here today, they want to be here tomorrow, and they want to be here years from now. Where the payment processing industry itself, the rules, the bylaws, when people come in, there's a way to predict based upon financials who's going to do what, right? Because if you have someone coming in with great financials, more than likely they're going to do the right thing because they have a lot to lose. If you have someone coming in who does not have financials, financials to meet what they said they're going to do, it's a high chance, and there's some other blemishes on the back end. Maybe they have bad credit. That happens to everybody. I've had bad credit as well. Maybe they have a ton of non-sufficient fund fees that, coming out of their bank account. Maybe there is no money in the bank account and they have high tickets. There's like all this, it's a brand new business. It's not set up correctly. There's all these things on the website that's not supposed to be there or that should be there and it's not there. You can predict. You can give a pretty good estimate. And there's rules for that. But as a whole, right, the payment processing space, the payment processor, they have to create bylaws that protect them, right? Those bylaws protect them, and also it protects the cardholder. You always have to weigh things out, right? You've heard the saying yin and yang, right? But there's also something, and when you go back even further, then you have what they call Ra and Nu. Both of these things represent polarities. In today's term, let's call it positive and negative. It doesn't mean positive that, oh my God, you're a happy-go-lucky person. Or it doesn't mean negative, meaning like, oh my God, you're just a Debbie Downer. You're like this, evil kind of vibe. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that there's opposites on every spectrum, right? And so I think it's really good to look at that when you're in business and not look at everything in black and white. And unfortunately, in business, in corporate America in particular, or even in payment processing, some people will know something is the truth, right? Like it's known if you go into the wrong area that, and it's a very impoverished area, there's a lot of crime in that area, that if you go in the wrong area at the wrong time with the wrong things, that something more than likely can happen to you. Okay. And it's also known that in corporate America, if you're not careful, if you don't have that great ethical attorney, and there's some out there, right? And I think those attorneys are going to become more and more in demand. And the other attorneys, after more information gets out and people start waking up, they're going to be like, you know what? That is going to help, I think, bring a level of ethics to the industry in itself. And so when you have that kind of space where in the corporate America space where you have all these different players coming in, it is virtually impossible to create bylaws and write contracts that only benefit those who are written specifically for businesses who do things the right way, but there's nothing in there to help bring balance and correction when something goes wrong, right? But that's not thinking positive and negative. So you have to write up these agreements and these contracts to help protect the payment processing company so that when you do have people who are, or businesses who are doing the right thing, you can shoot to the moon, right? Now, like, who's going to shut down a company who's processing the correct way, right? You want them to process as much as they possibly can because they're doing great business and there's there's mitigated or there's lowered risk. Whereas if you have other companies who aren't doing the right thing, and so you want to minimize your risk because the more business they do, the more things that could go wrong, unfortunately, right? And there's actual people like that in the industry as well. The more they are allowed to be in business, the more things could go wrong. So you have to write policies up that are both positive and that are negative. And that's just the industry in itself. But you have people in the industry as well that know sometimes it's really imbalanced, right? And you have more unethical behavior going on than not. It's like they're not really looking at it from a positive and negative. They're not looking at, oh, there's two sides to this, right? Which I think, in my opinion, doesn't really help, because in a relationship, if there's an issue going on and you don't discuss it, what happens? It festers and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where it becomes a disease and it takes on a course of its own, like a cancer. Well, I think that happens in a lot of industries where it's not discussed. It's like taboo to talk about. When it's happening all around and everyone's talking about it, it's just, I guess you can kind of create another industry off of that, right? Which is, I guess, the supposed reason why people were talking about doing crypto and Bitcoin, because, they wanted to get into this, I guess, this sort of system that the banks couldn't control. Well, what's the positive and negative in that? What's the positive side of, Bitcoin and crypto, right? The technology and all the different things that can happen with it, right? There's so many different uses of it. You can spend it in seconds in another country and transact business. That's all great. What's the flip side of that, right? When you don't have banking involved, then sometimes people can take advantage of that and abuse it. You send, 20 million crypto coins or Bitcoin somewhere, and the crypto could be made by a 12-year-old somewhere, and it really has no value, but you use your dollars to buy that, and then you zip it away somewhere, send it somewhere, and it's gone. right? That product doesn't, whatever was sold doesn't come back to you. There's no recourse, right? And, the government's not going to just step in to help each and every person. Those have to be some really big numbers for the government to step in and say, you know what, it's time to put an end to this. So that's the flip side of it. And I think a lot of people weren't thinking about that when crypto became popular. They were just thinking about only the positive side of it, which is what benefits them at the present moment. And if anyone was to talk against it or about it, they were considered taboo or behind times or too pro-government or something like that. Well, you can see today the results of that. And so in the banking world, there's pros and cons to the banking world as well, where you have situations where you have players in the industry that absolutely take advantage of people. And in most cases, they do it verbally, and then the paperwork says something different. You have sales reps who go around and they move deals from here to here. They have their, what they call merchants or their clients, believe that, hey, I'm representing this company, but they're really doing something totally different. And the business owner has this blind faith or trust in them, and they put the actual business owner in a pickle, right? And it's just like a well-known thing when you go into some industries. Everybody's like talking and shaking hands, but at the same time, people are like, you know what? We don't trust anybody here. And it's like, but you just can't get on the mic and say it. You can talk about it in circles and amongst yourselves. And I think one great solution, no matter what business you're in, but especially if you're in payments or any industry, it doesn't really make a difference, is to think about the pro and con in every particular situation, or the positive and negative in every situation. So if you have all these unethical players, it's a simple thing. What is the opposite of doing that? It's being ethical. Are you going to make as much money right away? Maybe not, okay? You can take that into marketing, right? And some people overpromise and underdeliver. So what is the opposite of overpromising, right? It's over freaking delivering. You don't even have to say as much, but you over deliver. And you can take that same scenario where you're bitten by the poisonous snake, and then you need the venom to help heal. And so it doesn't mean that unethical sales rep needs to be removed from the system, right? It doesn't mean that credit cards and banking need to be removed from the system, because to be honest with you, they're both fiat currency, right? Crypto is like backed by what? And what is Bitcoin backed by, right? Because there's a certain number out there. What is the dollar backed by? What is credit card backed by, right? And I think a lot of times we get so lost, and this is how people get taken advantage of, is because we have this like religious like belief. We have this very fanatical belief in something, and some people just go head on and there's no other way. It can't be done. And if you don't believe this, or if you say this, we don't want to mess with you. That's what makes entrepreneurship so beautiful. And I don't think it's the big corporations that are going to save America. I think it's the small entrepreneurs who speak their minds in a respectful way, who are willing to tell the truth, who are willing to look at both sides and not just one side, right? You have these big, gigantic corporations, and they're so big that our ideas are hard to get in there. It's hard to live. You can't even turn the corner. It'll take like a year just to make one small move. It's almost like the Titanic heading for the iceberg. And by the time they make that small turn to not hit the iceberg, boom, it's too freaking late. And that happens with a lot of freaking industries. There's some major players out there that this has happened to. And it allows smaller players to come in. You look at some entities out there that at one time we thought were just unstoppable, that they would never ever go out of business. You think about the Blackberries, you think about the Blockbusters, you thought they would never go out of business. If you can make 8, 9, or 10 figures off of simply late fees, why wouldn't you keep that business going? And I guarantee you, if someone within the Blockbuster circle or community came out and spoke against it, they would be demonized. They would be considered, we don't like that kind of talk. But the flip side of that is that they're no longer in business because it's not something that people favor. The market does not like that. It did not appreciate that. And today, where's Blockbuster? So by shutting people down and discarding ideas, and there's some people out here who go out and they say certain things that people don't like, and they're like, oh, you hating on us, or why do you do this, or why do you do that? Just let us be. Don't say anything. I think we should listen to those people. I'm not saying that just to be one-sided and negative all the time, but if somebody's coming up with great information that is truthful, listen to it, learn from it, right? And it can make you better. It can actually save you a lot of time and heartache, because you're not, unfortunately, when we make mistakes, in most cases, not all, because some of us don't listen to our parents like we should, or to our significant other like we should, or to our attorney, who's an ethical attorney like we should, or to our supervisor or our mentor. Some of us don't always listen, and we end up learning the hard way. But some of us do listen, and it saves us so much heartache and pain. But if we just ignore what they're saying, and we're in those situations before, many of us are in those situations where somebody's trying to tell us something and we just don't want to hear it. And then after we go through what we go through, we're like, oh my goodness, I wish I had have listened. So think about that in your space. You know, when the going gets rough, when the going gets tough, think about, okay, if it's tough now, if it's rough now, let me be in this moment. Let me not ignore it and just go out and buy myself an exotic car to forget about it, or go out and buy some exotic purse or shoes or clothes, forget about it, to put like tape on it. Be in the moment, absorb it, like live it, realize it, recognize it, and then say, okay, all right, what do I need to do to be on the opposite spectrum of that, right? And then how does that feel to be on the opposite spectrum as well? So I hope this helps. If you think this was beneficial, hit the like button. If you have any ideas to share to make me better or to make our audience better, our community better, by all means share them in the comments. And if you want more of this, hit the subscribe button. This is Khaazra. I'm out.